It's January 2025, and inside Microsoft's executive boardroom, the mood is grim. StatCounter just released devastating global market share data, and the numbers tell a story that boardroom members could barely comprehend. Windows 11, Microsoft's flagship operating system launched 3.5 years ago, sits at just 28.4% global market share. 3 months earlier, it was 31.2%. The decline isn't theoretical. It's real. It's measurable. It's accelerating. But the real shock isn't Windows 11's stagnation, it's what's happening with Windows 10. Microsoft officially ended support for Windows 10 7 months ago. They told users to upgrade, they pushed notifications, they made the upgrade process unavoidable on new hardware, and users responded by staying on Windows 10. The deprecated, no longer supported operating system now commands 58.7% of the market. Think about that for a second. Users are actively choosing to run unsupported software rather than adopt the brand new replacement Microsoft spent billions developing. The truly nuclear number emerges when you look at everything else. Linux combined with macOS now accounts for 26.5% of global market share. Over the past 12 months, these alternative platforms combined grew by 6.4 percentage points, while Windows 11 contracted by 2.8 points. The math is simple and terrifying for Redmond. For the first time in 3 decades, Windows' overall market share has slipped below 65%. The platform isn't declining slowly, it's collapsing in real time. According to multiple board members present at that meeting, Bill Gates wasn't just disappointed, he was furious. The real story, however, isn't about global statistics. It's about which specific markets are abandoning Windows and why. Start with Japan. Japan is one of the world's largest technology markets and has historically been a Windows stronghold. Japanese corporations, from retail chains to manufacturing facilities to financial institutions, built their entire digital infrastructure around Windows. That loyalty should have been unshakable. Then came Windows 11. In March 2025, Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs released comprehensive digital infrastructure analysis. The Windows 11 adoption figure was shocking. After 3.5 years on the market, Japanese businesses had adopted Windows 11 at a rate of just 11.3%. Windows 10 remained entrenched at 83.2%. Japan wasn't gradually transitioning to the new operating system. Japan was actively rejecting it. Microsoft's response was to send a delegation to Tokyo. They met with major corporate customers. They asked directly why adoption was so low. The feedback was methodical, specific, and damning. Japanese businesses explained that Windows 11 was fundamentally incompatible with how they worked. The centered taskbar, a signature Windows 11 design change, disrupted muscle memory developed over decades. Japanese text input methods that worked flawlessly on Windows 10 were broken on Windows 11. Specialized enterprise software that Japanese corporations depended on would crash or malfunction on the new system, and the TPM 2.0 requirement, a security feature Microsoft made mandatory, locked out millions of otherwise perfectly functional computers. Corporate Japan made a collective decision. They would stay on Windows 10 indefinitely. They would pay Microsoft's premium pricing for extended security updates if necessary, but they would not upgrade to Windows 11. Consider Yamamoto Corporation, which operates 140 retail locations throughout Japan. They manage approximately 2,800 computers running point-of-sale systems, all operating on Windows 10. Their IT department conducted a pilot test, installing Windows 11 on 50 machines to evaluate performance. The results were stark. Their proprietary POS software ran 23% slower on Windows 11. Transaction processing time increased from 38 seconds to 47 seconds on average. That's 9 seconds of additional processing per transaction. With approximately 400 transactions daily per location, each store was losing roughly 3,600 seconds, or 1 full hour of productivity every single day. Across 140 locations, that adds up to 140 hours of lost productivity daily across the entire operation. Yamamoto Corporation's decision was straightforward. They would stay on Windows 10. They would pay Microsoft $61 per computer annually for extended security support. That's $170,800 every year to keep using yesterday's operating system rather than upgrade to today's free version. They would literally rather pay to use an old product than switch to the new one without spending a dime. That's how fundamentally broken Windows 11 was for their operations. Germany tells an almost identical story, though the reason reasons are different. Germany is Europe's largest economy and has always been a critical Windows market. As of April 2025, Windows 11 adoption sat at 19.7%. Windows 10 maintained 63.4% market share. Linux, meanwhile, had climbed to 11.2%, while macOS held 5.7%. German businesses weren't just staying on Windows 10, they were actively exploring Linux and Mac alternatives. The driving factor was regulatory compliance. Specifically GDPR, Germany's Federal Office for Information Security, conducted a comprehensive 6-month evaluation of Windows 11. Their conclusion was unambiguous. Even with all telemetry settings minimized and data collection turned off as much as technically possible, Windows 11 was transmitting user data in ways that violated GDPR requirements. German businesses that handle customer data cannot legally deploy Windows 11 without exposing themselves to regulatory fines that could reach millions of euros. The implications were clear. The Federal Office for Information Security issued official guidance to German businesses: either evaluate alternative operating systems or remain on Windows 10 with extended support. The choice was between choosing a different platform and staying in perpetually on an outdated one, but neither option involved upgrading to Windows 11. This wasn't hypothetical. Deutsche Bank, one of Germany's largest financial institutions, made international headlines in March when they announced a massive strategic shift. They committed to deploying 47,000 MacBook Pros to their employees over a 3-year period, eliminating Windows from their organization almost entirely. The official public statement cited strategic IT modernization and platform diversity. Leaked internal documents told a different story. Windows 11 fundamentally failed to meet their data protection requirements. Deploying it would have created unacceptable GDPR violation risks. Rather than engage in eternal extended support payments for Windows 10, they decided to switch their entire infrastructure to Mac OS. Microsoft didn't lose a customer. They lost one of Germany's most significant corporate accounts. Siemens, the multinational industrial giant, announced a similar initiative. With 300,000 employees globally, including 180,000 office workers in jurisdictions with strict GDPR requirements, they couldn't rely on Windows 11. Siemens started piloting Linux on 50,000 workstations. If the pilot succeeded, a complete migration over 5 years would follow. Volkswagen launched their own evaluation, testing Ubuntu on 30,000 developer workstations. BMW opened formal reviews of Mac OS for 15,000 corporate employees. Germany's largest companies, the corporations that spent decades investing in Windows expertise and infrastructure, started planning systematic exits from the platform. They didn't want to leave. They didn't prefer alternatives. The math was simple though. Windows 11 created legal risk and operational problems. That was sufficient motivation, but the story gets worse when you examine the United States market. The United States is Microsoft's home territory, the market where Windows should be strongest, where network effects and business relationships run deepest. If Windows was going to maintain dominance anywhere, it should be America. As of March 2025, enterprise Windows 11 adoption in the US sat at 31.4%. On the surface, that's better than Japan's 11.3% or Germany's 19.7%. But the statistic is fundamentally misleading. That 31.4% figure includes computers shipped with Windows 11 pre-installed by equipment manufacturers. It includes deployment through default hardware configurations, not through active migration decisions. IT departments didn't choose Windows 11 because they evaluated it and decided it was superior. They got Windows 11 because that's what Dell, HP, and Lenovo shipped. Actual active migrations, where IT teams consciously decided to upgrade existing Windows 10 infrastructure to Windows 11, were minimal. The momentum wasn't building, it was stalling. Gartner surveyed 750 large US enterprises and asked a direct question about Windows 11 migration plans. The results were catastrophic for Microsoft. 23% of large US enterprises reported they have no plans to migrate from Windows 10. Ever. They're prepared to pay for extended security updates indefinitely, accepting that cost as permanent. They've decided staying is cheaper than changing. 41% reported they're actively evaluating alternatives. They're piloting macOS for subsets of their workforce. They're testing Linux for developer teams. They're exploring Chromebooks for specific use cases. They haven't committed to leaving Windows entirely, but they're systematically reducing their Windows footprint. Only 36% reported full commitment to Windows 11 migration. Do the math. 2/3 of major US enterprises are either explicitly rejecting Windows 11 or actively reducing their dependence on Windows platforms. The survey results consistently pointed to why: performance problems, application compatibility failures, user resistance to interface changes, security concerns about features like recall and Copilot, the cost of hardware, upgrades to meet TPM 2.0 requirements. Every single reason boiled down to the same conclusion: Windows 11 is worse than Windows 10 for business operations. Goldman Sachs became the example everyone was watching. Goldman Sachs publicly announced they would deploy macOS computers to 70,000 employees. A top-tier investment bank abandoning Windows entirely. The financial services industry tends to move in herds. If Goldman switches to macOS, Morgan Stanley starts evaluating. If Morgan Stanley switches, Bank of America follows. If Bank of America leaves, Citigroup has to consider it. The cascade effect could systematically eliminate Windows from Wall Street. That's tens of billions in enterprise licensing revenue at risk because Windows 11 pushed the most influential IT decision makers toward alternatives. The education market reveals perhaps the most devastating consequence. Schools and universities represent Microsoft's future customer base. Students who learn operating systems and school-develop loyalties that last decades. They enter the workforce comfortable with specific platforms. They become IT decision makers who recommend what they know. Education was historically where Microsoft ensured the next generation of users. That pipeline is breaking. Current Chromebook market share in education sits at 61%. Windows has dropped to 28%. macOS accounts for 11%. Windows used to own education. Now it's a distant third place. Cost is partially responsible, but the core issue is Windows 11's hardware requirements. Schools operate on limited budgets. Computers in educational facilities typically last 7 to 10 years before replacement. Many school districts still operating computers purchased between 2017 and 2019 faced an impossible choice when Windows 11 was released. These machines were perfectly functional, still had years of useful life remaining, and met all genuine computing needs, but they couldn't run Windows 11 due to TPM 2.0 requirements and processor limitations. School districts could either spend $12 to $18 million replacing computers that worked fine or switch to something that ran on existing hardware. Most chose the latter. Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the United States, made international headlines in February when they announced their plan. They would replace 200,000 Windows computers with Chromebooks over 4 years. The decision from a district of LAUSD's scale influences hundreds of other districts nationwide. Chicago Public Schools opened evaluation discussions. New York initiated pilots. Houston started research. The trend became unmistakable. Windows 11's requirements priced Windows out of the education market entirely. Universities followed the same pattern. UC Berkeley migrated 28,000 student laboratory computers to Ubuntu Linux. Stanford began testing Linux on 15,000 systems. MIT deployed Chromebooks for 8,000 freshman laptops. These aren't random institutions. Berkeley, Stanford, and MIT are elite universities that produce some of the world's most influential technologists. Students graduating from these campuses learned on Linux and Chrome OS. They developed native fluency with non-Windows platforms. When they enter the workforce, they become comfortable with alternatives. When they transition into IT leadership positions, they choose what they know. Microsoft is systematically losing the next generation of technology leaders and decision makers because Windows 11 forced schools toward alternatives. The education impact represents long-term damage to Microsoft's ecosystem. The developer community represents an immediate existential threat. Stack Overflow released their 2025 developer survey, and the results revealed something unprecedented in computing history. Professional developer Windows usage dropped to 41.8% of respondents. macOS reached 32.3%. Linux climbed to 25.9%. For the first time, more professional developers use non-Windows platforms than use Windows. Windows lost its majority share among the people who build software. This matters profoundly because developers build applications. If developers don't use Windows, they don't prioritize Windows in their development process. Applications get built for macOS and Linux first. Windows versions follow later if they arrive at all. This reverses 30 years of self-reinforcing advantage. Windows remained dominant because developers built Windows applications. That kept users on Windows. Users on Windows created market incentives for more Windows development. The cycle reinforced itself continuously for 3 decades. That cycle is now reversing. Developers have moved away from Windows. They're not building Windows first. The market incentive structure that drove Windows dominance is collapsing. Inside Microsoft, the January 2025 boardroom meeting grew intensely heated. Executives defended strategic decisions. Gates pushed back aggressively. Why ship recall when security researchers immediately identified critical vulnerabilities? Why force Copilot into Windows when users experienced it as intrusive? Why make the operating system measurably slower when performance is what customers actually value? Your personal computer has transformed into something you might not have agreed to, a sophisticated monitoring system that analyzes your behavior, catalogs your habits, and transmits this intelligence to corporate servers. The operating system powering the majority of desktop machines worldwide now includes artificial intelligence capabilities that extend far beyond helpful suggestions or voice recognition. These systems actively observe your keystrokes, examine your documents, and track your application usage under the premise of enhancing productivity. Windows 11 arrived with deeply integrated AI functionality that operates continuously in the background. Technologies like intelligent application monitoring, cloud-connected assistance, and predictive behavior analysis now function as standard features on millions of devices. Independent security analysts have documented concerning patterns in how these systems collect and process user data, findings serious enough to trigger formal inquiries from regulatory bodies. Governments have prohibited their use on official equipment, and major corporations have halted deployment plans entirely. More than 500 million computers that could upgrade to Windows 11 remain on older versions specifically to avoid these surveillance mechanisms. What follows is a detailed examination of exactly what data these AI systems access, why cybersecurity professionals describe them as observation infrastructure disguised as helpful tools, and concrete steps you can take to protect your privacy before these features become impossible to disable. Microsoft introduced its integrated AI assistant in autumn 2023 as the flagship feature of Windows 11's intelligence capabilities. The marketing message emphasized convenience. An AI companion that understands your workflow, helps navigate system settings, composes documents, condenses emails, and responds to questions about anything displayed on your monitor. The company presented this as an intuitive enhancement that would make computers easier to use while respecting user privacy. The technical implementation requires broad system access. The AI connects to every file in your reach, monitors which programs you launch, and establishes persistent connections to Microsoft's cloud infrastructure for processing. Microsoft described this as seamless productivity improvement that would eliminate tedious menu navigation and flatten the learning curve for complex tasks. The presentation suggested a natural evolution in how humans interact with machines. Security researchers who examined the actual operational mechanics discovered something considerably more invasive than the marketing suggested. When corporate security departments began rigorous testing in enterprise environments during late 2023 and early 2024, they immediately identified critical vulnerabilities. Security firms published research demonstrating that the AI assistant could access and potentially expose confidential information through what analysts termed oversharing exploits. The system operates with identical permissions as the logged-in user, meaning if an employee can view salary databases, confidential contracts, or merger documentation, the AI can read and reference all of that material when generating responses. The danger intensifies when users pose questions that inadvertently trigger data exposure to unauthorized recipients. A manager requesting help drafting a restructuring email might receive AI-generated content incorporating restricted HR documents. An executive asking for quarterly summaries could see responses referencing unannounced product launches or financial projections meant to remain classified. Testing in typical corporate networks revealed that over 15% of files containing sensitive information face exposure risks from these AI systems. The artificial intelligence lacks understanding of corporate information governance, data classification, frameworks, or need-to-know restrictions. It simply accesses whatever the user can reach and incorporates that material to generate comprehensive answers. Privacy researchers examining data collection practices found that the system transmits queries, contextual information, and usage patterns to Microsoft's cloud services. Although the company claims secure processing, the fundamental architecture means your questions, the files access to answer them, and metadata about your computing behavior all leave your device and enter Microsoft's data ecosystem. Institutional response was immediate and decisive. In March 2024, 2004, the United States House of Representatives banned congressional staff from using Microsoft's AI assistant entirely. The House's chief administrative officer issued guidance stating that cybersecurity officials deemed the tool unauthorized due to threats of leaking congressional data to non-approved cloud services. The directive ordered complete removal from all House devices. This was not precautionary action based on theoretical concerns. The House Cybersecurity Office had conducted technical evaluation and determined the system posed unacceptable threats to congressional data security. Simultaneously, multiple Fortune 500 companies quietly blocked deployments after their security teams raised identical concerns. A survey of enterprise security professionals found that 67% expressed concerns about AI tools exposing sensitive information through improper access controls or data leakage. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office told journalists that organizations must conduct thorough data protection impact assessments before deploying AI tools processing personal information, and that companies cannot assume these systems automatically comply with privacy regulations. These were not complaints from activists. These were institutional decisions made by government cybersecurity offices, corporate security teams, and data protection regulators after rigorous technical evaluation. Consider the real-world implications. A defense contractor employee working on classified proposals has every technical specification, security clearance detail, and government contract term indexed by the AI's context awareness. If their account is compromised through phishing, an attacker gains not just file access, but access to an AI that has already analyzed and can summarize all classified information. A lawyer using the system to draft legal arguments provides the AI with every confidential client communication, litigation strategy document, and settlement negotiation detail. If opposing counsel discovers this through legal discovery or the firm experiences a data breach, attorney-client privilege protections become meaningless when the AI has already processed and potentially exposed that information. A human resources director asking for help drafting a performance plan might receive responses incorporating confidential medical records, past disciplinary actions, or salary information that should never appear in the document. The director might not notice because they trust the AI understands appropriate boundaries. A financial analyst requesting market research summaries could receive responses incorporating insider information, unreleased earnings data, or confidential client portfolios. The AI does not understand securities regulations or insider trading restrictions. It simply uses whatever data it can access to provide complete answers. After criticism throughout 2024, Microsoft announced changes supposedly addressing data exposure risks. The company introduced commercial data protection, claiming to prevent user prompts from training AI models. Administrative controls allow IT departments to disable the assistant for specific user groups. Integration with data loss prevention systems theoretically extends protective policies to AI interactions. Enhanced auditing capabilities supposedly let security teams monitor what information the AI accesses. These sounded like meaningful improvements, and Microsoft promoted them as evidence the company takes enterprise security seriously. But when security researchers and corporate IT teams tested these protections throughout 2025, they found significant gaps. Commercial data protection does not prevent the AI from accessing sensitive data initially. It only claims to prevent that data from training models. Information still gets transmitted to Microsoft's cloud for processing. Administrative controls require complex configuration across multiple services and lack granular control over data types the AI can access. Data loss prevention integration depends on organizations having already implemented comprehensive classification systems, which most have not. Even properly configured, it cannot prevent the AI from accessing data users legitimately have permission to view but should not be incorporating into AI-generated content. Security analysts published research in October 2025 showing that Microsoft's security controls are reactive rather than preventive. The system allows problematic data access to occur, then relies on auditing to detect it afterward. This approach fails to prevent initial exposure, which is exactly what enterprise security policies aim to stop. You can take control immediately, and the process is more straightforward than Microsoft's settings menu suggests. Start by completely disabling the AI assistant. Right-click its taskbar icon and select taskbar settings, then toggle off the button. To prevent background operation, navigate to Settings, Privacy and Security, General, and disable all options related to AI features features and personalized experiences. Address broader data collection feeding Microsoft's AI systems. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Diagnostics and Feedback, and set optional diagnostic data to off. This stops Windows from sending detailed behavior telemetry to Microsoft servers. In the same section, review activity history and disable the option letting Windows collect your activities, preventing the system from building a timeline of everything you do. For complete removal of AI components, PowerShell commands, and third-party tools systematically strip out these features. Widely used open source scripts available online allow you to run administrative commands that remove AI packages, disable related services, modify registry entries controlling AI behavior, and prevent automatic reinstallation during updates. This requires technical comfort with PowerShell and administrator access, but provides comprehensive removal that standard interfaces do not offer. Your operating system is no longer just a tool running applications and managing files. It has become a data collection platform feeding artificial intelligence systems designed to predict your needs, analyze your behavior, and integrate your entire digital life into cloud services controlled by a corporation profiting from that data. This quiet shift turns a personal computer into an observation device constantly learning from everything you do. Microsoft's chief marketing officer told investors in November 2025 that the company plans to make AI integration so deeply embedded that removing it becomes practically impossible for average users. That statement is not marketing language. It is a declaration about future platform design. The roadmap involves connecting every aspect of your computing experience to AI systems requiring cloud connectivity, continuous monitoring, and comprehensive data access. The billion users still running older Windows versions despite ended support, and the 500 million devices eligible for upgrades that refuse to switch are making deliberate choices. They are choosing stability, predictability, and limited data footprints over promises of smart features bundled with extensive tracking. They have evaluated what AI-powered operating systems actually mean for privacy and autonomy, and decided productivity benefits do not justify surveillance costs. You have options right now. You can open your Windows settings and disable AI features, turning your computer into a monitoring device. That means spending a few minutes in privacy menus, turning off personalized experiences, restricting diagnostic data, and shutting down integrated assistants watching what you do in the background. Or you can share this information with someone using Windows 11 because they deserve to know what their operating system actually does before deciding whether to accept or reject these features. Your computer should work for you, not report on you. The same principle should apply to every connected device in your life. Right now, as you read this, your computer might be building a detailed timeline of everything you do, not because of malware, not because hackers infected your system, but because your operating system is designed to do exactly that. If you're running a modern version of Windows, there's a feature quietly documenting your digital life. Every application you open, every file you access, every website you visit, all of it logged, time-stamped, and stored in a hidden database that most people never knew existed. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a documented function that security researchers have been warning about since 2018. And the scariest part? You probably never turned it on. It just started running automatically, buried so deep in your settings that you'd never find it by accident. The file is called activitiescache.db. It appeared in spring 2018 when Microsoft introduced a feature called Timeline. The pitch sounded helpful. Imagine being able to scroll back through 30 days of your computer activity to find that document you were working on or that website you visited last week. Like a time machine for your workflow, Microsoft said. Open your task view, scroll backward through time, and jump right back into what you were doing, even across different devices. It seemed convenient. Your desktop activity could sync to your laptop, your tablet, even your phone if you used Microsoft's browser or certain apps. The system relied on cloud syncing through Microsoft servers, which meant uploading your activity data to the company, but Microsoft assured users they'd have control. You could disable it in your privacy settings if you wanted to. The mechanics were straightforward. Windows would record every app launch, every file access, every browsing session into a local database called activitiescache.db. The storage format used SQLite, an industry standard database system used by countless applications. Timeline would pull from this database to display your recent activities visually, and if you enabled Cloud Sync, Windows would also upload this activity data to Microsoft's servers for cross-device access. It was presented as seamless, useful, and completely optional, but security experts quickly realized the reality was far more more complicated. Cybersecurity specialists and digital forensics analysts started examining Activities Cache DB shortly after Timeline launched. What they found raised serious red flags. The database didn't just store simple summaries, it contained precise timestamps down to the second, complete file paths, application identifiers, window titles, and sometimes URLs and document names. Every action was cataloged with forensic level precision. Even more concerning, the database sat locally in an unencrypted format. Anyone with physical access to your computer or anyone who gained remote access through malware could simply navigate to that folder, copy the activities cache.db file, and walk away with a comprehensive record of your computing habits spanning the past month. No password required, no system alert triggered. The file was just sitting there, readable by any SQLite viewer, many of which are free and publicly available. Forensic investigators began using Activities Cache DB as a primary evidence source in cases. They could reconstruct timelines of computer use, identify which files were accessed when, map browsing patterns, and even correlate activities between different sessions. One forensic tool noted that criminals using techniques like Windows sandbox environments to hide their tracks would often leave evidence in Activities Cache DB, recording application launch times and file interactions, even if other forensic evidence was deleted. To test the extent of logging, security researchers ran simple experiments. They opened a browser, typed a fake credit card number into a test field, saved a document with a sensitive file name, and launched several applications into sequence. Then they opened Activities Cache.db using a free tool designed for viewing SQLite databases. Every action had been recorded. The browser session, the document name, the app launches, all timestamped and categorized by activity type. You might think strangers don't access my computer, so this doesn't affect me. But that reasoning ignores how data breaches actually happen. Malware doesn't need physical access. Ransomware, spyware, and remote access Trojans routinely exfiltrate data from compromised machines. Once your system is infected, Activities Cache DB becomes a valuable target. Attackers don't need to install keyloggers or screen capture tools. Your operating system has already done the recording for them, and because the file updates continuously, even a brief infection window can capture days or weeks of activity data. European regulatory authorities took notice quickly. Beginning in 2019, Microsoft faced a GDPR investigation led by Irish regulators at the request of German authorities regarding Windows data collection and logging practices. The investigation examined whether Microsoft's default settings complied with regulations, whether users were adequately informed about data collection, and whether the company was following data minimization principles required under GDPR. The European Data Protection Board stated in May 2024 that it was examining Microsoft regarding difficulties in maintaining user privacy, emphasizing the importance of transparency in data handling and the requirement of processing personal data only for specified purposes. The board stressed that privacy protection must be built in from the start, with thorough risk assessment conducted before deploying features. While these investigations haven't resulted in widely publicized fines specific to Activities Cache DB, they highlight a recurring pattern of regulatory concern about Microsoft's handling of personal data. Privacy advocates and digital rights organizations have consistently argued that activity history collection potentially violates core GDPR principles. GDPR mandates that personal data collection be limited to what's necessary for a specific purpose, that users give informed consent, and that companies incorporate privacy by design. Yet activity history was enabled by default initially, meaning users were opted in automatically without deliberate choice. Even when users disabled the visible timeline feature, security researchers discovered that Activities Cache.db continued updating in some cases. This matters because the data activity history collects falls squarely into categories that GDPR considers sensitive: medical information browsed online, financial documents accessed from a folder, confidential legal communications opened through an application. These aren't vague data points. They're detailed records of personal, professional, and private actions. So what does this mean for ordinary people? Consider some real scenarios, not hypothetical situations, but realistic examples based on documented risks. Imagine someone escaping domestic abuse who uses a shared computer to research shelters, legal help, and safe locations. Every search, every URL, every document opened is stored in Activities Cache.db with exact timestamps. If their abuser accesses that computer for just a few minutes, that entire escape plan is exposed, not through browser history, which can be cleared, but through a system file almost nobody knows knows exists. Consider a journalist working on classified sources for a sensitive investigation. They download encrypted files through secure channels, review documents briefly, and communicate through privacy-focused platforms. But before encryption happens, before the secure channel opens, Windows has already recorded the file path the application used and the time of access in Activities Cache DB. If that journalist's laptop is stolen at an airport or lost during travel, that activity record provides a roadmap of exactly what they were working on and when. Or imagine a therapist who uses a computer to maintain session notes, access files from a healthcare provider database, and review treatment records. Medical privacy laws require strict protection of patient health information, but if that computer is infected by malware, or if the device is lost or stolen, Activities Cache.db contains timestamps and file paths that could reveal which patients were seen, when, which records were opened, and the duration of each session. That's a compliance nightmare and a direct patient data breach. These aren't theoretical. The types of potential harm are well documented. Medical details, financial information, legal defense, confidential research. All of these, when recorded in an unprotected local database, become a liability. Microsoft has made changes in response to criticism, but the fundamental problem remains. In recent versions of Windows, Microsoft removed the activity history settings menu from the privacy section, starting with certain builds in 2024. The company also discontinued the feature to sync activity data to Microsoft servers through updates released in early that year. At first glance, these changes suggest Microsoft is removing timeline and its associated logging. But here's what researchers have confirmed still happens. The Activities Cache.db file continues to be created and populated on current versions of Windows, even in recent updates. A user testing the latest version documented that the Connected Devices folder still contains an active Activities Cache.db file that tracks virtually all activity on the machine. The database structure is identical. The logging has continued. What changed is that Microsoft made finding the settings to disable it more difficult. When users do locate the old settings, they discover that activity history is protected by basic username and password authentication only. No biometric verification required. No drive encryption enabled by default. No automatic purging of old data. The file just keeps building records until someone manually deletes it or the 30-day rolling window removes the oldest entries. Here's a stark reality. Your entire month of digital activity, every file, every application, every web destination is protected by the same security as your computer login password. If someone cracks your password, guesses your PIN, or uses a bootable USB drive to bypass login, they have immediate access to Activities Cache.db. Nothing else stops them. Your privacy depends on a single security layer that millions of users keep weak or reuse across multiple accounts. So what can you actually do about this? Start by deleting the existing records. Press Windows plus R, open the Run dialog. Type %local app data, %/ connected devices. Navigate to the folder that appears. Look for Activities Cache.db and related files. Delete them and empty your recycle bin. Next, disable future tracking. On older Windows versions, go to Settings, Privacy, Activity History, and turn off the options that store your information on this device and send it to Microsoft. On newer Windows versions, you may need to use Group Policy Editor or Registry Modifications to disable telemetry client behaviors at the system level, then minimize additional logging. In Settings, check Privacy, Diagnostics, and Feedback, and adjust to required diagnostic data to control what's transmitted. You can also visit privacy.microsoft.com, sign into your account, and clear your cloud activity history so Microsoft's servers have less data about you. For additional protection, make sure your account password is strong and unique, and enable multi-factor authentication wherever possible to make unauthorized access harder. Regularly updating Windows and your security software also reduces the chance that malware can find and extract this hidden activity file. After a few days, check the Connected Devices folder again. If Activities Cache.db is present or growing, your changes didn't fully work and you may need to repeat the technical steps, especially on corporate or educational machines. If you use a work computer, talk to your IT department because corporate policies might override certain privacy settings and keep activity logging running in the background. Your computer's operating system no longer works for you alone. It also works for the company that built it. Convenience features come with a hidden data cost, and Activities Cache.db 5G proves that privacy is no longer default. Treat it as an ongoing process, not a one-time fix, and review your privacy settings every few months as updates roll out and new capabilities get added.